I want to move on to the RBA. I wonder what the RBA thinks of the advice they've been told overnight. The world's most powerful central banks have issued a stark warning that climate change could trigger the next financial crisis. So the Reserve Bank has been told it might have to start buying up coal mines to save the economy from an emissions disaster. Now, to suggest that the RBA gobble up coal-fired stations to bring them down is just fanciful. We can't compare ourselves to Europe and the UK that have other major forms of baseload power. We don't have nuclear. We don't have the kind of baseload power alternatives that that part of the world has. If we shut down or allowed the RBA to gobble up the coal-fired power stations, we'd be in the dark tomorrow, impoverished in about a month.
Yeah, and not just that, let's look at the fact that overwhelmingly consolidated revenue of all of our state governments, and in particular the federal government, comes from the extraction of resources from the ground, in particular resources like coal.
$80 billion worth.
So I'm sure that if the RBA picked up a coal mine and all of the coal mines and shut them down overnight, not only would unemployment go through the roof, but then you'd have no ability to pay for schools and hospitals and the army and the defence forces and everything we've seen this summer that has, you know, saved thousands of lives.
Yeah, exactly. If we had the choice that Europe and the UK had, if we started to talk about nuclear, we could close down those terrible coal-fired power stations.
Well, look, I know the Twitter sphere is going to go mad on this, so I'll just put it straight out.
Well, let's rev it up, make it go further mad.
There's a lot of lies out there too. Germany, they always talk about Germany, it's closed all its coal mines and all. It hasn't. What it done is last year, up until last year, it closed down its black coal, which is the cleanest coal you can use if you're looking at energy in emissions reductions. Yeah. They've still got another 30 to 40 years of coal mining to do on brown coal, which is the more pollutive coal. So before everyone starts tweeting out there about Germany and closing their coal mines, they haven't. OK, let's get to the facts. Yeah. The issue for us here in Australia is that they do have alternatives. If you're in Europe, Germany is getting power. Well, guess where from? They're getting it from the Russians in regard to gas, and they're getting it from the French in regard to nuclear energy.
They went down the renewable line, Warren, and it was a complete and utter disaster because nothing was secure and the price of energy went through the roof.
Yeah. So they're getting all that in the background, and of course we can't do that out here in Australia. So this nonsense that, OK, let's just close all this down. What's going to happen to all those jobs in those rural communities?
Yeah.
You know, what's going to happen to our economy? It's a massive part. And you're right, you just said it earlier in regard to who's going to pay for the education, who's going to pay for the...
Well, we're quaking at the moment, shaking in our boots because we're spending $2 billion to help the victims of bushfire. $2 billion. We won't have a surplus. It's a big dig. Imagine taking $80 billion out of the bottom line.
Yeah, look, and it's all nonsense. No one's actually doing that in the world. You know, as I just pointed out, the country they always point out, Germany, is closing its coal. It hasn't. That's the fact. It closed. Yes, it closed the black coal, but which is the more pure. Low emissions coal, but they're still, over the next 30 years, 40 years, they're still going to be doing brown coal. Yeah. So, and also they live in a different world. As I said, they get gas from the Russians, they get nuclear energy from the French. We've got to start coming up with some ideas here. If we are to believe what the banks are saying, if we are to believe what all these people who are gluing themselves to the roads are saying, then we've got to look at everything.
What's your solution?
What's the solution? We've got to go nuclear. We've got to have a serious conversation about that. We've got a serious conversation in regard to the gas. I look at Victoria's locked up all its gas. You know, these are the things that we need to transition.
But Victoria's behaving exactly the same as Germany. I mean, let's face it. Daniel Andrews is doing exactly the same thing. He wants to say that we're, you know, a low emissions state, yet he's more than happy to take a feed through the national power grid through another state that will be burning coal. And I think this is some of the honesty we need to have about these conversations. You're 100% right about nuclear, Warren. We've got to be real about this stuff. And if these left-wing greenies want to say, well, you know, you can't burn coal, well, we need a secure form of baseload power. And at this point, it probably is nuclear.
Well, if they followed the IPCC, which apparently is their god, the IPCC is saying you've got to turn to nuclear.
Correct.
It is. It's the only thing... Look, I started some of these geoscientist conventions and that over the last years. I was on the uranium board there for 4 years. Right. Look, everyone raves on about Fukushima and Chernobyl. Well, France has had nuclear power since the 1950s. Finland, Sweden. You just go for all these countries with all the left-wing lovies love, and they're all running nuclear.
Yeah. And both the UK and the United States are getting into modular nuclear for regions, and that is the future.